The thing that we get when we seed state politics and off-year elections and school board stuff and what have you, when we cede all that to ultra conservatives, we wind up with a world that looks like the 50s in all the worst ways.
Nightmares becoming reality for so many. Disturbing real-life horror stories are surfacing in states with the most restrictive abortion bans. In a story first reported by Time magazine, this month, a girl only 13 years old gave birth after her mother said that her daughter was raped and impregnated by a stranger in Clarksdale, Mississippi last year. The girl could not get an abortion and is now a mom going into the 7th grade. The mother of the girl tried to find an abortion clinic, but the last provider in Mississippi closed last summer after the Supreme Court's decision in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Clinic. That meant the closest abortion provider was in Chicago, Illinois, and that drive to Chicago would have been more than 9 hours from Clarksdale, Mississippi, and ultimately the mother decided it was too costly of a trip. Today, Mississippi, along with many of the states surrounding it, has a 6-week abortion ban with limited exceptions for rape or if the pregnancy is life-threatening. But these exceptions are rarely granted and poorly tracked. Joining me now, Greta Kemp Martin, the litigation director for Disability Rights Mississippi and the Democratic candidate for Mississippi Attorney General. Greta, thanks for joining the show.
Now, wait a minute. Don't let that fly by too quickly. That right there is a candidate for Attorney General in Mississippi. If we've learned anything in recent years, it's that Republicans should not be trusted to enforce the law. They really cannot be trusted with that. The Republican Party, in my opinion, and I'll say it again and again, is a criminal organization. We cannot have them being the Attorney General. We cannot have them being the chief of police. We cannot have them responsible for enforcing the law because they have no ethics, they have no morals. They are a criminal organization. They only care about making their own lives better, and they do not mind doing so at the expense of the rest of us. In fact, they prefer it. So, I'm going to pay real close attention to this gal right now and do what I can, and I hope you'll join me, to increase her odds of becoming Attorney General in the, let's call it, just the state of Mississippi.
So first, I just want to get your reaction to this incredibly heartbreaking story of a 13-year-old girl who was raped, forced to give birth, and now is going to go into 7th grade.
Well, first, thank you for having me, Katie. This is unfortunately a common story. What we are seeing in this post-Dobbs landscape that was created by my opponent is that we have restrictive policies across the state that do not allow women to get the care that they need. And even the exceptions that are in place are narrowly interpreted and in some cases are fearfully applied. And in this case in particular, it failed. So even though there is a rape exception in Mississippi, even if the victim filed a police report, it appears that there's just no clear process for granting these exceptions when someone needs abortion care.
Yeah, and Greta, to your point about these exceptions, in the beginning of this year, the New York Times reported that in your state of Mississippi, those 2 exceptions exist since that state's abortion ban went into effect. But the state is requiring that a rape be reported to law enforcement in order to qualify for a legal abortion. So you actually have to go to the police and be victimized again, in my opinion. But even if an exception is made, that person still must travel out of the state to even obtain the procedure that potentially could save her life. So what needs to be done, Greta, to ensure that there's equity in not only abortion access and care for everyone, including the most vulnerable residents living in your state?
Well, I think my hope is that our federal government would eventually codify Roe and this would not be a problem. But as we stand in this post-Dobbs world,
Let's pause it right there. Y'all know that the major plan of everything we're trying to do, the major thing is to win the House, Senate, and White House in 2024. Add this to it: codifying Roe into federal law. There are an almost infinite number of shows we could do about how important that is. Winning big in 2024. House, Senate, White House. Yes, right now we're talking about the importance of winning state by state and not giving up those fights. Both are true. We wouldn't need 2024 as badly as we do. We'd had bigger victories earlier. It's just that simple. So if you ever wonder what I think the priority is in all of this, it's 2024 and everything leading up to it. We need progressives in the primaries, and then we need a blue tidal wave.
I believe there has to be.
We need a wave that would make Moses nervous.
Some broad interpretations of these exceptions. Even the exception that allows an abortion for the life of the mother, we have physicians who are fearful of even utilizing that exception to treat their patients because they're afraid they'll be penalized, they'll be criminalized, they'll have their license taken from them. So these exceptions do not work. So if you are going to place a 15-week abortion ban here in Mississippi, you have to be able to apply these exceptions in cases like we are seeing here in Clarksdale, Mississippi, like we have seen across the country where the life of the mother has been at risk. We've had women being sent out to the parking lot and told, until your life is at risk, I cannot adequately treat you. So these exceptions have to be broadly interpreted. And honestly, we need more exceptions. You know, here in Mississippi, we do not have an incest exception. Our lawmakers have expressed that that will never happen in this state. So if you're going to have exceptions for adequate care, you have to have them broadly interpreted.
Yeah, Greta, that last abortion clinic in Mississippi, it closed after Dobbs came out last summer in 2022. But before Dobbs, patients could drive to a Memphis clinic that was only 90 minutes north, or to another clinic in Jackson just 2.5 hours south. What are your Mississippi residents telling you as you're campaigning to be the next AG about this attack on their reproductive rights?
Because it's salty, I'm going to feel comfortable tossing this part in before she answers that. She's going to give her campaign pitch. Okay, cool. We'll hear it. What other laws does that apply to? Like, for example, let's potheads unite here for a minute. In the fantastic state of Michigan, pot's legal. And if you live in a state where it's illegal, it's fine to come here, buy some, and give yourself the giggles for an afternoon. Will other states start making laws saying it's illegal for you to have consumed marijuana in another state? To what degree, I ask, can a state determine what your business can be in another state? I don't like that we've just let this abortion thing go on general principle. And if you ever wonder why I lament the loss of actual conservative values in the Republican Party, this is why. It's not that I necessarily agree with conservatives most of the time. In fact, I think there is need for enough change that I consider myself quite left-leaning. However, I did used to appreciate that there were people that believed in small government as a principle. And I would expect conservatives to be very much against any state law that tries to tell you what you can do in another state. I think that's just not only is it an evil thing in and of itself for this specific case, not only is this probably the most egregious example of what could happen, but just in principle, it's authoritarian in a way that I will not allow in my country. And the way I suggest that you join me in not allowing it is to refuse to participate. If this was the 1800s, I wouldn't. If I saw a exhausted looking black fella go jogging by me heading towards Canada, and I see some red-faced honky coming up behind him 5 minutes later, I'm going to point wherever he didn't go and say he went that way. Do the same for people receiving an abortion. Don't ask questions if you don't have to, and don't rat them out. And if you are working in an abortion clinic and somebody requests information from out of state from you, don't give it to them. That's civil disobedience, and I expect everybody who gives a damn about their fellow Americans to engage in it.
So, you know, I do not believe that Mississippians' position on abortion is as clear cut as my opponent and her Republican friends would like to think. Right after Dobbs in June of 2022, we had a slight majority of Mississippians that actually disagreed with the decision to overturn Roe versus Wade, about 51%. And only about 18% of Mississippi voters want abortion to be illegal in all cases. And then as recently in June of this year, we have polling that says that individuals that voted in the Republican primary on August 8th, at about 45% supported repealing the trigger law that bans most abortions in this state. Plain and simple, Mississippians, especially Mississippi women, do not want the government interfering in their medical decisions. And I think time and time again, we are seeing that across the state, but our lawmakers and my opponent just continue to ignore the wishes of Mississippians.
Yeah, and Greta, Mississippi has the second highest maternal mortality rate in the United States, with 43 deaths per 100,000 live births. And black women in Mississippi are 4 times as likely to die from pregnancy-related complications.
Katie's using the fax machine, so I'm going to let her just lay down the information here. But I do want to just focus on this for a second. There's a philosophical argument to be had about whether or not a fertilized cell is a life, and to say that there isn't is simply to say that you're right and you can't imagine being wrong, and so it must be impossible for you to be wrong. I am not sure, truly, how I feel about where the point lies, where something becomes alive. The important thing to understand is it's not my body on the line. Even if I was capable of becoming pregnant, you know, if David Bowie were to be resurrected and we gave it the old college try, the fact is, you don't know until you are. And one thing I would like us to agree on is we cannot ask people to risk their lives. That's not something we can do. In the same way, I don't believe in the draft. If you think a war is just, then sign up for it. If you think a war is unjust, you shouldn't be made to sign up for it. Similarly, if you think that you ought to have a kid, then okay. But if you're thinking, I don't want to risk my life, I don't have the health care necessary, this is a dangerous thing, having a child. We, the people, cannot demand that other folks undertake that risk. In other words, bodily autonomy. We have the rights to complete control over our own bodies. And not even the kid. Even if you think it's truly alive the second it is a fertilized cell, not even that cell has the right to your body if you don't want to loan it. And this is the consequence of what happens when we try to take the right to somebody's body away from them. Death happens.
As white women. So what does this say about Mississippi's priorities for reproductive health care as a whole?
Well, I believe it speaks volumes. Clearly, reproductive health care is not a priority for our lawmakers. Honestly, health care in general does not seem to be a priority for our lawmakers. We are one of the few states that have failed to expand Medicaid. We have maternal health care deserts across the state. So, of course, our women are dying because they can't receive the care they need in their communities. And time again, we have had Mississippians tell our lawmakers just loudly that we would like our health care improved. We would like Medicaid expansion to occur. And our lawmakers continue to ignore what Mississippians truly want and what they're begging for. We have Mississippians dying. This is a healthcare crisis, not just for our maternal health care, but all health care across the board. And the time is now to make a change.
Greta Kemp-Martin, thank you for joining us today
And Katie Fang, thank you for the excellent report, and thank you, Wicked Foxy Dragon, for the suggestion. It was a good one. That was a good one. Yeah, just remember, you got a Democrat that at least talks a pretty good game running in Mississippi, and do not help. If there are states that ask, if you work in an abortion clinic, if you work in medical yada yada, and a maternity, whatever, and there is a southern state that you know has banned abortion, asking for patient information that they don't really need, don't give it to them. Now, obviously, if you're a medical expert and you understand the ins and outs, and you know that they're not just hunting for somebody to persecute for no damn reason, okay, do your job, do no harm, etc., etc. But let's get down to the nitty gritty. If you know they are hunting pregnant women, as they do not participate. And if you're just a regular lump of coal like me, then you see somebody that needs help. If you have a family member that's coming up to get an abortion, offer them the couch. Don't ask the questions. Drive them to wherever they need to go. Don't make it harder for them. We're going to get through these times, and we're going to have to do this stuff less long if, in addition to this stuff, we can get people like that gal elected in Mississippi.